I found the recording 3 weeks ago in my grandfather's lighthouse, and I haven't slept properly since. The old reel-to-reel tape was hidden inside a rusted coffee tin, wrapped in oilcloth and sealed with wax. My grandfather, Thomas Whitmore, died in 1987. The lighthouse on Cape Meridian had been abandoned for 40 years. I was there to photograph it before the demolition crew arrived. Instead, I found his journal, and the tape, and a map with coordinates circled in red ink so faded it was almost invisible. The journal's final entry was dated September 14, 1983. 4 years before he died. 4 years before anyone knew he was sick. They're listening again. The sound came back at 3:47 a.m. Same frequency, same pattern. I've recorded it this time. God forgive me, I've recorded it. Margaret thinks I'm losing my mind, but she doesn't hear what I hear. She doesn't understand what the pattern means. It's not random. It's never been random. It's a response that I'm Alex Whitmore. I'm a documentary photographer from Boston. And 3 weeks ago, I played that tape in the lighthouse keeper's quarters while a storm battered the Massachusetts coast. What I heard shouldn't exist. What happened next shouldn't be possible. The recording lasted 17 minutes. Most of it was ocean noise, waves against rocks, wind through broken windows. But at the 9-minute mark, something changed. A sound rose from beneath the static. Low, rhythmic, like breathing through water, like something massive drawing air through a throat not designed for it. The pattern repeated every 47 seconds, and each time it repeated, the sound grew clearer, closer, more deliberate. My grandfather's voice broke through the recording at minute 12, shaking, barely a whisper. It knows I'm listening. Jesus Christ, it knows. Then silence. Then the breathing again. But this time, underneath it, something else. Voices. Dozens of them. Speaking in languages I didn't recognize. Speaking in unison. Speaking the same phrase over and over until the tape ran out. I transcribed what I could hear. I sent it to Dr. Emily Torres, a linguistics professor at MIT who specializes in dead languages. She called me 6 hours later. Her voice was tight. Controlled. She said she needed to see the original recording. She said the phrase I'd transcribed matched fragments found in 3 separate archaeological sites. Sites separated by thousands of miles. Sites that had no historical contact with each other. The phrase translated roughly to, "We are still beneath. We are still waiting. We are still hungry." Dr. Torres arrived at the lighthouse 2 days later. She brought equipment. Recording analysis software. Spectrographic imaging tools. We played the tape again in the keeper's quarters while rain hammered the windows. She didn't speak for the entire 17 minutes. When it finished, she removed her headphones and stared at the Atlantic through the salt-stained glass. "The voices aren't speaking," she said. "They're drowning. Those are drowning voices. And the pattern underneath, the breathing sound, that's not biological. It's mechanical. Something is playing those voices, broadcasting them, like a lure." She showed me the spectrographic analysis on her laptop. The breathing pattern created a waveform that repeated with mathematical precision. Too precise for any natural phenomenon. And buried within the pattern, invisible to the human ear but clear on the imaging, was a secondary signal. A subsonic frequency pulsing at intervals that matched the circled coordinates on my grandfather's map. The coordinates pointed to a location 40 miles offshore. A deep water trench that wasn't supposed to be there according to any official maritime chart that we found. The research Dr. Torres called colleagues, oceanographers, marine geologists. 3 different sources confirmed the same thing. The Cape Meridian Trench was discovered in 1979 during a routine coastal survey. The discovery was classified within weeks. The survey team was disbanded. The data was sealed under a maritime security directive that nobody could explain, but someone had leaked fragments over the years. Forum posts. Academic papers that were retracted. Anonymous uploads to file-sharing sites. We pieced together a picture from the fragments. The trench was 14,000 feet deep. It ended in a geological formation that shouldn't exist at that depth. A perfect circle. 2 miles in diameter. And at its center, picked up by sonar imaging before the survey was shut down, was a structure, not a rock formation. Not a volcanic vent. A structure. With right angles. With symmetry. With what looked like openings arranged in concentric patterns around a central chamber. My grandfather had been part of the original Coast Guard response in 1979. His journal mentioned it only once, 3 years later. They found something down there. Something that shouldn't be found. They told us to forget. They told us the readings were wrong. But I heard the sound that night, I heard it through the water. And I've heard it every year since. Always on the same date. September 14th. Always at 3:47 a.m. Always getting louder. That I went deeper into the journal after Dr. Torres left the first time. There were pages I'd missed. Pages stuck together with moisture and age. When I carefully separated them, I found sketches. My grandfather had drawn what he'd seen during that Coast Guard response in 1979. Crude drawings of the sonar readings. The circular formation. But there was something else. Something he'd drawn over and over across multiple pages with increasing detail and desperation, symbols. Carved into the structure's surface according to what the sonar had captured. The same symbols appeared in his sketches dozens of times. Always the same arrangement. Always with notes in the margins. Found these in the town library. Old maritime records. Ship logs from 1647. Captain reported seeing these marks on rocks near the coast before his crew went mad. Only he survived. That I photographed the sketches and sent them to Dr. Torres. She called back within an hour. Her voice had changed. The professional distance was gone. She sounded scared. "Alex, I need you to stop looking into this. I need you to destroy that tape and leave the lighthouse. Those symbols aren't from any known language system. They're not from any known culture. But they appear in 16 different locations around the Atlantic basin. Always near deep water. Always associated with disappearances. Always accompanied by the same historical accounts. People hearing voices. People walking into the ocean. Entire coastal villages abandoned overnight with no explanation." She told me about a monastery in Portugal. Built in 1203 on a cliff overlooking the Atlantic. The monks kept records of a sound they heard every autumn. A breathing sound from the ocean depths. They believed it was a demon testing the strength of their faith. They prayed for protection. They carved symbols into the monastery walls. Symbols meant to seal away evil. The same symbols my grandfather had drawn. The same symbols carved into the structure 14,000 feet below the surface. The monastery was abandoned in 1755, the same year as the Great Lisbon earthquake. But according to the records Dr. Torres found, the monks didn't leave because of the earthquake. They left 3 days before it happened. The final entry in their chronicle was written by the abbot. "The seal is breaking. The breathing has changed. We hear our brothers' voices in the water, calling us to join them. We must flee before the migration begins. God forgive us for what we've contained here. God forgive us for failing." Dr. Torres found 17 similar accounts. Different centuries. Different languages. Different continents. But always the same pattern. A sound from deep water. Symbols carved as warnings or seals. Mass disappearances. And always, the survivors reported the same thing. The sound wasn't trying to escape. It was calling, summoning, drawing people toward the deep places. "Your grandfather wasn't just recording a phenomenon," Dr. Torres said. "He was documenting a cycle. Something that's been happening for centuries. Maybe millennia. And if the pattern holds, if September 14th means what I think it means, we're about to witness the next phase." She came back to the lighthouse the following day. This time she brought more than recording equipment. She brought files. Physical files in weathered folders marked with classification stamps that had been stamped over with declassified and dates from the 1990s. She'd called in favors. She'd accessed archives that technically didn't exist anymore. She'd found the truth about the 1979 survey. The survey hadn't been routine. It had been a response. 3 fishing vessels had disappeared in the same week 40 miles off Cape Meridian. No distress calls. No wreckage. Just gone. The Coast Guard found something during the search. A thermal anomaly at extreme depth. Heat signatures that suggested volcanic activity. But when they sent down specialized equipment, they discovered the heat wasn't coming from magma. It was coming from the structure itself. From mechanisms inside that were still active after an unknown period of time. The survey team included my grandfather. They included marine biologists, geologists, and a specialist whose credentials were redacted from every document. Someone whose job title was simply listed as containment advisor. They spent 3 days above the trench. They lowered equipment. They took measurements. They recorded everything. On the 3rd day, at 3:47 a.m., the sound started. Everyone on the vessel heard it. Not through the water, through the hull, through the metal, through their bones. A breathing pattern. A rhythm that made their hearts synchronize with it. made their thoughts slow, made them want to dive, to swim, to descend. The containment advisor ordered an immediate evacuation. The vessel was moved to port. The crew was separated. My grandfather never spoke about it, but he heard it every year afterward. Every September 14th, every 3:47 a.m. Because once you hear the sound, once you synchronize with the rhythm, it never leaves. It calls to you across the distance. Reminds you that something down there knows you listen. Dr. Torres spread the declassified documents across the lighthouse keeper's table. Sonar images, thermal scans, spectral analysis, and photographs. Grainy, deep-water photographs taken by a submersible that descended to within 200 feet of the structure before its tether snapped and it was lost. The photographs showed a surface covered in growth, barnacles, coral, sediment layers that suggested the structure had been there for thousands of years. But in the center, where the growth was scraped away by deep ocean currents, the surface was pristine, unmarked by time, made of something that didn't corrode, didn't age, didn't belong to any known material science, and across that pristine surface, carved deep into whatever impossible material composed it, were the symbols, the warnings, the seals. But in the photographs, you could see something else. Cracks. Hairline fractures spreading from a central point, spreading in patterns that suggested pressure from inside, something pushing, testing, waiting for the moment when the material would finally fail. The classified report concluded the structure is a containment vessel, Dr. Torres said. Built by a civilization we have no record of, placed at a depth that makes investigation nearly impossible, designed to hold something that can't be killed or destroyed, only contained, only sealed away. And the breathing sound, the broadcast, that's not the thing inside. That's the containment system. An automated warning system that's been running for so long that most of its original functions have degraded. But one function remains. Every year, on the same date, at the same time, it tests the seal. It broadcasts the drowning voices. It calls out to see if anyone is listening. To see if anyone remembers what's down there. To see if anyone will respond. She pulled out one final document. A memo dated 1982, 3 years after the survey, written by the containment advisor to an unnamed recipient. The memo was brief. Structural analysis indicates catastrophic failure likely within 40 to 50 years. Recommend immediate development of secondary containment protocols. Primary seal shows evidence of deliberate sabotage from within. Whatever is contained has intelligence, has patience, has been systematically weakening the barrier for centuries. Migration event projected for mid-2020s. Suggest permanent monitoring station and preparation for evacuation of coastal populations within 200-mile radius. The memo had a handwritten note at the bottom. Recommendation denied. Budgetary constraints. Alternative solution required. There was no record of any alternative solution. No evidence that anyone continued monitoring the site. No indication that anyone took the warning seriously. Just my grandfather. Alone in his lighthouse. Listening every year. Documenting. Waiting. Dr. Torres found one more thing. A Coast Guard medical report from 1979. My grandfather had been examined after the survey. The report noted unusual symptoms. Insomnia. Auditory hallucinations. An obsessive focus on oceanic sounds. But there was an addendum written by a doctor whose name was redacted. Patient reports hearing voices in languages he doesn't speak. Voice patterns match audio samples from survey. Patient claims the voices are teaching him. Claims they're showing him what's beneath. Claims they're preparing him for when it rises. Recommends psychiatric evaluation and permanent removal from coastal duties. My grandfather refused the psychiatric evaluation. He resigned from the Coast Guard. He moved permanently to the lighthouse. And he spent the next 4 years listening, learning, preparing. The journal entries I'd found were just the surface. Dr. Torres and I searched the lighthouse together. We found more journals. Hidden in the walls. Buried in the foundation. Sealed in waterproof containers and submerged in the water tanks. The journals documented everything. The progression of the sound. The increasing clarity of the voices. The way the breathing pattern had changed over 4 years. Getting faster. Getting stronger. Getting more insistent. My grandfather had taught himself basic linguistics. He'd transcribed hours of the drowning voices. He'd identified 17 distinct languages. Akkadian, Sumerian, Proto-Indo-European, languages that hadn't been spoken in millennia. Languages that predated recorded civilization, and underneath them all, a base language. Something older. Something that human mouths weren't designed to speak. He translated fragments. Enough to understand the message. The drowning voices weren't victims. They were converts. People who'd heard the call over centuries. People who'd walked into the ocean. Who'd descended. Who'd reached the structure and found a way inside. Found what was waiting there. And joined it. Merged with it. Became part of the broadcast. Part of the lure. Part of the migration, because the thing in the trench wasn't trying to escape. It was recruiting. Building an army. Collecting minds and voices and memories from everyone who'd ever heard the sound and answered. And when the seal finally broke, when the containment failed, it wouldn't emerge alone. It would bring them all. Everyone who'd ever heard the call. Everyone who'd ever synchronized with the breathing. Everyone who'd ever listened. My grandfather's final journal was different from the others. The handwriting was erratic. The entries were short. Desperate. He knew he was dying. The doctors had told him he had months. But the sound was getting stronger. The seal was failing faster than anyone had projected. And he'd realized something. The breathing pattern, the mathematical precision, the subsonic frequency, it was all designed for one purpose. Synchronization. Once enough people heard it, once enough minds were linked to it, the thing in the trench could use them. Use their thoughts. Their awareness. Their physical presence. It could distribute itself across thousands of hosts. Emerge not from the deep water but from everyone who'd ever listened. September 14, 1987, he wrote. I've destroyed most of the recordings. Burned the translations. Erased what I could. But one tape remains. One copy of the sound. One chance for someone to understand what's coming. I'm leaving it for Alex. My grandson. He's smart. Careful. He'll know what to do. He'll know who to tell. He'll know how to stop this, but I didn't know. I found the tape and I played it. I listened. I synchronized. And now I hear the breathing in my sleep. I hear the drowning voices when I'm alone. I hear them calling me toward the water. Dr. Torres left yesterday. She said she couldn't stay. Said the sound was affecting her too. Said she'd been hearing her mother's voice calling from the ocean. Her mother who drowned when she was 6. Her mother whose body was never found. She left the equipment. Left the files. Left me alone in the lighthouse with the knowledge that in 2 days, at exactly 3:47 a.m., the sound will return. And this time, it won't be a test. This time, the seal is breaking. Today is September 11, 2024. The gray sedan appeared this morning. It's been parked at the gate since dawn. But there's something else now. People. Walking along the beach. Walking toward the lighthouse. Walking toward the water. I've counted 37 of them so far. They don't speak. Don't acknowledge each other. They just walk to the waterline and stand there. Staring at the horizon. Waiting. That I recognized 3 of them. Tourists who visited the lighthouse last week. People I gave directions to. People who stood in this room and asked about the history. People who might have heard the sound leaking through the walls. Through the equipment. Through me. The tide is wrong again tonight. The water is rising too fast. And the people on the beach are walking forward. Into the waves. Into the current. 37 people wading into the Atlantic at midnight with no hesitation. No fear. Just synchronized movement. Just response to a call that only they can hear. That I'm recording this on September 11th at 11:58 p.m. The lighthouse is surrounded. Not by the gray sedan. Not by government agents. By people. Hundreds of them now. Walking from the town. Walking from the highway. Walking from inland areas miles away. All converging on Cape Meridian. All moving toward the water. All synchronized with a breathing pattern that's growing louder with each passing hour. That I can hear it now without the equipment. Without the tape. It's coming through the foundation. Through the bedrock beneath the lighthouse. The breathing. The rhythm. The call. And underneath it, new voices. Fresh voices. The 37 people from the beach. Already converted. Already transmitting. Already part of the broadcast. That in 48 hours, when September 14th arrives, when 3:47 a.m. comes, the seal will break completely. The structure will open. And everything that's been contained for millennia will rise. Not as a single entity. Not as a creature. But as a migration. A flood. A tide of consciousness distributed across every person who ever heard the sound. Every person who ever synchronized. Every person who ever listened and failed to destroy the recording like my grandfather tried to do. That I'm uploading these files now. Before the internet fails. Before the infrastructure collapses. Before the migration spreads beyond the coast. If you're hearing this, if you find these recordings, if you're investigating what happened to Cape Meridian, you need to know the truth. The ocean doesn't keep secrets. The ocean is a barrier, a prison, and we've been living on top of it, building cities on its edge, sailing across its surface, never understanding that the depths were sealed for a reason, that some things were contained because they couldn't be killed, only isolated, only kept away from the light and air and human minds that could host them. The breathing is synchronizing with my heartbeat now, the voices are speaking in my thoughts, showing me what's beneath, showing me what's coming, showing me the structure opening, the seal breaking, the darkness pouring upward through 14,000 feet of water like ink through clear fluid that I'm not going to answer. I'm going to fight it. I'm going to resist until the end, but I can feel it pulling, feel the call, feel the hunger that's been waiting for centuries, waiting for enough listeners, enough hosts, enough minds to distribute itself across so completely that there's no containing it again, no sealing it away, no stopping what comes next. This is Alex Whitmore. It's September 12th, 2024, at 12:03 a.m. If you're hearing this, the migration has already begun. Don't go to the coast. Don't go near deep water. Don't listen for the breathing. Don't try to help the people walking into the ocean. They're already gone. Already converted. Already part of something that's been waiting since before we built civilizations. Since before we gave names to the ocean. Since before we learned to fear the deep places where light doesn't reach. And whatever you do, don't play the tape. Don't listen to the recording. Don't synchronize with the rhythm. Because once you hear it, really hear it, you become part of the broadcast. Part of the call. Part of the migration that's been building for thousands of years. One person at a time. One listener at a time. One synchronized heartbeat at a time. The sound is constant now. The lighthouse is shaking. The people are in the water. Swimming. Diving. Descending toward coordinates 40 miles offshore. Toward a trench that shouldn't exist. Toward a seal that's finally breaking after millennia of pressure. After centuries of testing. After decades of systematic weakening from the intelligence trapped inside them. My grandfather tried to warn us. The monks tried to seal it. The survey team tried to contain it. But some things are patient. Some things understand that time is meaningless when you're immortal. When you're ancient. When you're hungry enough to wait for the exact right moment. The exact right number of listeners. The exact right alignment of minds and tides and weakened barriers. The moment is now. The seal is breaking. The migration is beginning. And I'm standing in a lighthouse that was built to mark the boundary. To warn ships away. To remind us that some waters are too deep. Some places are too dark. Some secrets should stay buried beneath 14,000 feet of pressure and cold and forgetting. But we forgot why we built the lighthouse. We forgot why the monks prayed. We forgot why our ancestors feared the ocean. We forgot that containment only works if you remember what's being contained. If you maintain the barriers. If you respect the seals. If you never, ever listen to the sound. The breathing is my breathing now. The voices are my voice. The call is irresistible. I'm walking toward the door. Toward the stairs. Toward the beach where hundreds of people are wading into the Atlantic like a congregation. Like an army. Like a migration that's been prophesied and planned and prepared for longer than human memory. That I'm sorry, grandfather. I'm sorry I played the tape. I'm sorry I listened. I'm sorry I couldn't stop what you tried so hard to prevent. The deep sound is rising. And we're all going to meet it. Every single one of us who ever heard the breathing. Whoever synchronized. Whoever became part of the broadcast. This is Alex Whitmore. It's September 12th, 2024. The water is calling. The seal is breaking. The migration has begun, and God help whatever's left when it's finally free.